Alright, so here's something I've been thinking about for a while. We were all told that the safe path was go to uni, get a degree, get a job. Simple. But let's be honest, we all know that that conventional path isn't as safe as it once was anymore. As many of you have probably already personally experienced, you can spend years at a university or college, rack up debt, and still come out the other side with no real direction, no job, and no other leverages in your life. At the same time, I've been noticing something else. People who are building their own thing online, whether it be YouTube, a business, etc., they're not just taking a risk, they're building freedom and they're buying freedom. I say this as someone who's done it the right way. I grew up believing that the old adage my parents taught me, which was to do academically well in school, get a degree, keep your head down, don't rock the boat, prioritize comfort and survival, get a stable job, preferably a STEM one. While that path used to lead to some great outcomes for the previous generations before us, and while my parents' advice was well intentioned, it no longer works in a system, in a world where being on autopilot leaves you open and vulnerable to the systemic exploitation. We live in a transitional age now where merely just being academic and having credentials is becoming less and less valued. People now have learned to survive in an attention economy, as you're likely aware of already, where visibility brings much more leverage in your life than just having the right academic credentials. And even that landscape is already hanging on by a thread, as people have now gotten tired of the endless slop, misinformation, and shallow content that's being pumped out on the internet on a second by second basis. We will eventually live in a landscape where authenticity is the currency. I realized my old path wasn't giving me the life that I actually wanted. It gave me structure, a bit of direction, but not clarity, not momentum, and definitely not excitement or hope about the future. That came later, when I started stepping off the path and began building something of my own. Not some grand business empire or whatever, but just getting honest, thinking clearly, and moving intentionally. That's what actually made things feel solid. This is going to be the first video on this channel. There's going to be a lot more, where we explore this journey together, where I go back and break down the turning points, the things I've learned to share with you guys, and the parts that nearly broke me, and the parts that began to rebuild me. I don't have everything figured out, but I've figured out a lot. And if anything I say here helps someone else move forward, then it's worth doing. All right, see you guys in the next one. I can't wait. So, you've been feeling it too. The quiet discomfort that nobody talks about. That strange numbness when you think, this is supposed to be the right path. So why does it feel so lifeless? At first, you might even wonder if something's wrong with you. You keep telling yourself that maybe you're just too lazy. Maybe you're too idealistic. Or maybe you're running away from adult responsibilities. But the truth is, you're not running away. You're beginning to wake up. Waking up to the fact that what most people call the safe path only looks safe. With the rising cost of living crisis, wage stagnation, housing crisis, culture war, job crisis, dating crisis, the safe path is now unable to offer what it promised in the first place. A guaranteed life of stability and comfort. In the past, staying still granted you the quiet safety, without major risks of falling behind and a moment to gather yourself back again. The landscape has since shifted. The real risk now is the cost of inaction and stagnation, as the pace that society moves at means that staying still will leave you open and being lost to the noise and left behind. Ask yourself, if the path that you're on is truly yours, then why are you still feeling like you're shrinking every time you move forward? Imagine being told that you can only eat one fruit for the rest of your life. You've never tried any of them. You're just afraid of starving. So you grab the first one that's handed to you and you say, "Oh, here's some durian." Smells a bit funky, but everyone around you says, "Oh, good job. At least you've got something." It's real. Some people don't even get that. So you eat the durian every day. And over time, you convinced yourself that you like it. But you don't. You never did. That's what happens when people pick a life on autopilot instead of consciously choosing it. They don't starve, but they never taste anything that truly fits either. If you stay in that loop long enough, something else starts to happen. You don't just tolerate the wrong life, you become it. You become the product of that lifestyle and embody traits that were never suited for you to begin with. If you then want to change, you'll have to strip away your first identity, which is terrifying. That's what the old path demands. It asks you to spend your limited amount of life energy and funnel it into the safe identity, the stable career, and the acceptable life. And it tells you that later, once you're comfortable, you'll be able to switch. But the type of comfort it offers doesn't give you freedom. It cements you. It molds you into a shape it wants you to be while the metal is still hot and tells you that you can change without melting down again once you've cooled off and hardened into the new shape. And by the time you want to pivot, your energy has already been spent. Not just your time, but your beliefs, your habits, your internal structure. And undoing that, it costs even more from you than had you even just built the right thing from the start. That's what scared me the most. Not failure, but the thought of one day waking up as a fully built version of someone who I never wanted to be. And even if I was successful, I'd still be trapped. So I left. Not because I hated the old path, but because it was never mine. And no matter how efficient or impressive it looked, it would never lead me to a place that I actually wanted to arrive at. I chose temporary discomfort over permanent dullness. I chose unknown over untrue, and stopped trying to fall in love with what's available, so I could finally hold out for what's aligned with me. That was the beginning of everything. And maybe if you're watching this, you're not running away either. Maybe you're just waking up. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, wait, am I actually living? Or just playing a role that was handed to me a long time ago? You wouldn't be alone. Most people aren't living, they're just acting. Inside a box they didn't even realize they were in. We live in a culture obsessed with types. The glam girl, the gamer guy, the high achiever, the shy art student, the mean kid, and the pretty boy. At some point, without even realizing it, we pick one, or more accurately, we fall into one. We all grow up absorbing archetypes and begin performing that in accordance. Let's take two archetypes, for example. The glam girl, who learns early on that beauty is power, and the gamer guy, who learns that blending in equals safety. Despite their obvious differences, both eventually end up getting stuck. Whether you're the head of the cheer squad, or the guy in the corner with his hoodie pulled low, at the end of the day, you're still just a type, not a person, and society sees you as such. People borrow power from submitting to a recognizable role, a pre-built persona that is safe to digest in our culture. Some archetypes yield greater results than others, such as pretty boys and glam girls who borrow attention through aesthetic mastery. But at the end of the day, people just see the archetype. They don't truly know the real person behind the mask. Because borrowed power isn't yours. It vanishes the moment culture changes or public attention shifts. You're not respected, you're just convenient. Borrowed power is always rented from the system. The moment you stop playing the role, the benefits you get from it gets taken away from you. You may get visibility by playing along with the preset persona, but the second that role loses social value, your entire identity collapses. You think that the solution is easy. Just stop playing the role. But stepping outside that box means shedding the old version of yourself and becoming socially unreadable, unexplainable, and people who used to be your friends don't know how to engage with you anymore. You don't just lose your mask, you lose your support system. Because when you spend most of your life chasing attention, validation, and visibility, you deny yourself the opportunity to discover who you really are. That's why most people stay boxed in. The mask may slowly suffocate them, but it also protects them from uncomfortable silence. So how do you get out? You don't escape the box, you outgrow it. And that happens when you start building personal narrative. Not aesthetics, not social tactics. Narrative. This is the moment you stop asking, how do I get seen? And start asking yourself, what do I want to be remembered for? And what type of people do I actually want in my sphere? You're not boxed in because the world hates you. You're boxed in because the world only recognizes what it already understands. Socially pre-approved masks and personas. If you want to be seen for who you really are, you have to become something it's never seen before. Someone that it's never seen before. Breaking out doesn't mean deleting your past. It means asking yourself who you are when no one else is watching. So many people just go on full autopilot mode and endlessly scroll social media when they're alone. Not because they're bored, but because they haven't developed who they are yet when they are alone. This is where personal narrative starts. Not with image, but with ownership over your own life. Most people aren't boxed in by society. They're boxed in by a version of themselves that they leaned into and started performing years ago for cheap validation. And forgot how to stop, because over time, their identity gets swallowed by it. I was once swallowed by it. I played fully into the class clown persona back in school, and it took me many years to finally outgrow the box that I put myself in. It was limiting. It was suffocating. If you're going through what I did, just know that you're not broken. You're not lost. You're just still living inside an image of you that was designed to be safe, easy to label, and easily interactable. But that also doesn't align with who you are now, or makes people look deeper behind the mask. Outgrowing the box won't be easy, and it will take time. You will become undefinable socially, and your friends will stop understanding you. But in the end, when the box finally breaks, it's worth every step. I will see you in the next video. Take care. I spent $90,000 on a degree. 6 years at university. 2 degrees. And at the end of it, I didn't feel any smarter. I just felt tired. Not from the workload, but tired in a way that you can't sleep off. Like something was missing, and I didn't have the language to ask for it. Like you followed the map perfectly, but the destination feels hollow. Then one day, completely by accident, I watched a random video online. Low production, no fancy editing. Just a guy sitting in his car, speaking directly to the camera. Quiet and calm, but certain. And for some reason that I can't explain at the time, the video hit me harder than anything that I had heard in 6 years of lectures. 6 years ago, when I first stepped on campus, I believed that clarity would come. After I had earned my credentials, that the fog would lift. That at some point, I'd know who I was and where I was headed. But the fog didn't lift. If anything, it got thicker. I remember sitting in the lecture halfway through my 2nd degree and realizing that I wasn't absorbing anything. All I knew was that if I made it through these next semesters, I would finally be handed the piece of paper that would make me feel like I was accomplishing something, achieving something. It would give me a sense of accomplishment. But I never truly liked the degree I was doing. I wanted to do something creative, to make something of my own that isn't able to be replicated by other people. Like creating short films or writing a book. But I put those dreams of mine aside because I believed that dreams were luxuries and that were reserved only for those who have succeeded in the conventional path. After you've gotten a stable 9-to-5 job, after you've settled with a family, after you've retired. But the truth is, dreams and aspirations are not luxuries, they're necessities. The famous rat experiment, for example, they had 2 groups of rats, where one was placed into a barrel of water, where the lid was left off, and the other one was placed into another barrel of water, where the lid was left on, and it was closed off. So the rats could not see the sky and escape. What ended up happening was that the rats in the barrel of water where the lid was closed only swam for 15 minutes before drowning, while the rats in the other barrel, where they could see what was outside and that the lid was off, those rats kept swimming for 60 hours. You can't keep swimming with the lid off. You will burn out quickly if you put your time, effort, and energy into something that doesn't truly align with you. Somewhere along the way, I accepted the lie that dreams were indulgent, that they were supposed to be dessert, not the main course. But they're not something to retire into, because you won't have more time later. People think they can wait, that if they do the safe thing first, lock in their career, their family, then later, once everything else is stable, they can come back and do what they really wanted. But that's not how that works. Because each year that passes, the anchors get heavier. The job becomes harder to leave. The mortgage arrives. The kids need you. You get comfortable, and your identity gets wrapped around stability. You get absorbed by the life that you have built as a launchpad for what you actually wanted. And every pivot away from that path you choose starts to look more like a crisis than a choice. And by then, even if you have the money, you won't have the energy. Even if you have the time, you might not have the clarity. Even if the dream still calls to you, your ears now receive a different frequency. And in the end, you may have built a life, but not the one that you had envisioned. You may have gotten achievements and accomplishments, degrees, job positions, corporate titles, but the accomplishments were pre-approved, pre-built, safe, yes, but interchangeable and replaceable. Hopefully this can be your version of that YouTube video I saw, of the guy in his car. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. I'm bored. That phrase used to mean something. Now it's just another way of saying my brain's gone offline and I don't know how to get it back. And the worst part is that you probably think that this feeling is normal. So why is it that you can scroll for countless hours on social media, binge endless TikToks, watch countless hours of video essays on YouTube, and still feel bored? Why does more stimulation lead to more numbness, emptiness, and detachment? It's not because your life is boring. It's because your mind has been hijacked. The truth is, you're not bored because nothing's happening. You're bored because too much is happening, and none of it's real. Back when we were young, before the current waves of social media, we used to be able to just sit with ourselves without constant distractions. We used to be able to read the back of cleaning bottles in the bathroom instead of just getting anxious because we had nothing to do. We used to be able to just take a walk outside without having to listen to a podcast or have constant background noise to distract us. But now your attention is a commodity that's competed over online. Somewhere along the way, we became allergic to silences and pauses in our life. Every time that stillness creeps in, we hit it with a dopamine grenade. Swipe, scroll, noise. So the boredom never gets a chance to show what it actually wants to become. Stillness isn't something to fear. You don't need to fill every gap. You don't need to always consume or even produce. Because you don't really get to know who you are until you've spent enough time doing nothing. You were never meant to feel every single waking second. When your mind gets flooded non-stop, it stops listening. Your own internal voice gets drowned out. That numbness you feel isn't natural. It's a defense mechanism to stop you from actually feeling. Many people aren't even addicted to apps because they're fun. They're addicted to the relief of not having to face the discomfort of stillness or confronting the person who they are without the noise and distractions. But that relief will never truly make you content or fulfilled. The longer you stay in that loop, the more your baseline boredom becomes chronic. It's time to stop outsourcing your attention. You don't need another app. You don't need another rush of cheap excitement. You just need a moment of refined, undistracted presence. Because only in silence do you start to feel again. Let yourself be bored. Let your thoughts get uncomfortable and learn to sit with nothing. And watch what that allows you to become. What doors that opens. If you're one of those people that think, I just don't feel anything anymore, it's because your nervous system is fried. Not from pain, but from noise. You've been on a dopamine IV drip for years. You're not supposed to feel good 24/7. Boredom isn't the enemy. It's necessary for transformation. It's necessary for you to meet your future self. You need space. You need the discomfort and stillness. You need silence that's so deafening that it forces your real thoughts to come out. And when it does, watch the doors and pathways open for you, one by one. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Take care. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, the holy trinity of immigrant approval. That was supposed to be the golden ticket. That was supposed to be proof that you made it. And after that, boom. The next step was supposed to be find a girlfriend, get married and settle down. and have kids. But here's the truth. You might have a stable income. You might have corporate success. You might be qualified in all sorts of things. But that no longer translates over to today's Western dating landscape. You followed the blueprint, but the world changed, and the blueprint didn't. And if you're a first or second generation immigrant kid whose family migrated over to a Western country from an Asian country, this one's for you. Our parents passed down that system onto us because that was what worked for them. In a time and culture where being out of the social spotlight meant safety, where getting good grades and landing a decent job right out of school was enough to signal your place and identity in society. Where staying low-key throughout your youth and early adulthood signaled that you were a reliable bachelor. But since then, the terrain has changed. We live in an attention economy now, and also emerging authenticity economy. And in this terrain, where the visibility is currency, simply being competent at your job doesn't make you visible. Being safe doesn't make you memorable. In fact, it's almost the opposite. Playing it safe is the fastest way to get passed over, especially as a guy. If you're an Asian guy in the West, this hits harder because growing up, we didn't have visibility pre-built into the culture for us. The only archetype that existed for us was passive, pragmatic, smart but overlooked and awkward, and not confident. When you grow up with the message of you're useful but you're not desired, internalized, we start to live like it. We minimize ourselves. We become afraid of self-expression and don't see it as something that's for us. You wait for someone to give you a chance. And even if you succeed by conventional metrics, it doesn't translate into success in dating. Because success without story is silent. That's why developing and building personal narrative isn't optional for Asian guys in the West. It's essential if you want to thrive socially and not just spend your days trying to get by. You need to show people how to see you. You need to be the author of your own life. And I see people focusing on all the wrong things like hustle culture and gym culture. You don't need to be a tech bro or a finance bro or an academic weapon or the gym bro. You just need to be truthfully expressing yourself. Because if you don't write your own story, you'll end up living your life as a background character in someone else's story. And that's probably not a flattering role. Now let's talk about the biggest trap. Many guys rely solely on diversity and DEI initiatives, thinking that that will translate over well in dating. Let me be blunt. If you're a guy, girls aren't going to choose you out of charity. No one's going to choose you because you're pitied. Men aren't elevated through sympathy. No one's going to choose you just because of some inclusivity policy. You don't date someone because of some inclusivity movement. You date someone because you feel something with them. That spark, that energy, that flow. And if you're an Asian guy in the West, you need to understand that credentials won't make you felt. Diversity movements can make you visible, seen, acknowledged, even understood and respected. But those don't automatically translate into desire or intrigue. You can't rely on those initiatives to fix that for you. So stop waiting to be chosen, otherwise you'll be waiting forever. Start being the author of your own life and build your personal narrative. Your academic credentials and job titles will make you employable, but it won't make you felt. And in a world that's getting more and more automated, being able to resonate, to be able to be felt, is more important than ever before. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. My dog's more present than me. No spiritual books, no self-help podcasts. He just exists, fully, peacefully, here. He just turned 14 last month. And I've been thinking, a lot of people say, things like, oh, I wish I was a bird flying free with no responsibilities. That would be great. I'd be so at peace. And I get it. But when you think about it, birds have responsibilities too. They build nests, they have to feed their young, they have to scavenge for food, look out for predators. So maybe it's not the freedom from responsibility that makes animals so present. It's that they don't live in time the way we do. They're not really living old conversations or previewing imagined futures. They're not stuck in what could have been or what might be. They're just here. Being present isn't some mystical state. It's not meditation either. It's just being here while you're here. Of course, our ability to reflect and forecast is powerful. It's what built cities, philosophies, and stories. But it can also actively hold you back if it's what keeps you from experiencing and living life itself. Animals don't need to choose the present. They're just in it. Because they just naturally are. But we do have to choose it. And maybe with a little practice, we can learn to use our minds without getting lost in it. We tend to believe that if we just think hard enough, we'd eventually break through. We'd replay the past looking for the right edit, rehearse the future hoping it'll go exactly as you planned. But meanwhile, life slips by in the background, not waiting for us to finish processing. The thing is, we don't need more clarity. Sometimes we just need less noise. Sometimes the answer isn't solving the moment. It's in just feeling it and soaking it in and just being aware of it. Because a lot of the times there aren't solutions to problems that you face. But just being aware of it, instead of just dismissing it as, oh, if we talk about it without a solution, then it's just a waste of time, right? Well, it's not, because if you're just aware of it, when the right solution comes by, since you're aware of the issue that you currently face, you're in the right headspace to grab onto that solution when it comes. So if you never delve into it or just sit in the problem and feel it, when the right solution comes by, the right opportunity comes by, you'll just miss it because you're not aware of it. You never really fully understood it. My dog never tries to optimize his routine, for example, or perfect his identity, and that just comes naturally for him because he's a dog. He walks when it's time to walk, he eats when it's time to eat, and rests without guilt when he's tired. He doesn't need a life coach, he's just a patch of sun on the floor. But what if we stopped thinking of presence as something that we have to earn, and started treating it as something we return to? Not a peak state, just not a finished product either, but kind of a home base. The breath between two thoughts and silence just in between whatever busy day we're having. Sometimes I catch myself rushing to get somewhere in life, and I look over and my dog's just sitting there, blinking slowly, waiting for nothing, just being. And it reminds me, maybe I don't need more time. Maybe I just need to feel what I already have. We're the only species that can imagine so many potential futures and also have so many regrets. But we're also the ones that can really step back and say, I'm here, I'm enough for now. So if you've been spinning in your head lately, worrying you're behind, trying to solve life like a puzzle, maybe this is your little reset. Not to do less, but just to remember that life happens here. Not then, not there, but here. And you can come back to it whenever you need to. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. As you might know, there's a silent epidemic going on right now, where a lot of guys, especially young men, are withdrawing from society. More and more guys are depressed or lost, but they don't go to therapy. They go to the gym instead. Not just because therapy can alienate a lot of men, but also there's a deeper dynamic at play. Gym culture doesn't ask to talk about your problems. It just says, show up, lift this, and get better. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. It feels safe. You don't have to explain or expose yourself. And your barbell doesn't care about your trauma. You just have to do the reps and the weight goes up and you get more and more in shape as time goes on. So why do so many guys prefer this over sitting at a therapist's couch? Aside from current therapy structures not speaking to men, there's a primal rooted biological and psychological need for men to feel useful. One of the most common words depressed guys use to describe themselves is useless. So the gym is one of the places where you can see progress and results relatively quickly, where you can translate your pain into progress, which acts as a way to satiate that desire to feel useful and competent again. Men are also taught growing up to fix, not feel, generally speaking, which can lead to difficulty opening up, along with expressing and processing emotion. It's also ingrained in many guys at a very young age that people only really care about your pain after you've made it, where your wounds are only talked about once they become scars. The gym, for many guys, is the first place where progress is real and fair and measurable, where you get back whatever you put in, where you learn about discipline, persistence, and delayed gratification. However, one of the issues I personally see and observe with gym bros is that you go to avoid feeling negative emotions and to try and use it to distract or numb yourself. Don't turn lifting into another sedation tool. Let yourself feel while you're at the gym. I believe that emotions like anger and sadness aren't inherently bad. They're just double-bladed, depending on how it's channeled and used. They can push and fuel you to greater heights, but if you let it control you, it can also break you down. All this being said though, gym can be where you start healing and can even be a place where you discover yourself. But I don't think that it's a replacement for therapy. If you need therapy and think that that's something that will truly help you, then don't take this as a gym replacing therapy talk. I'd suggest doing both. A lot of men are struggling right now with feeling useful. A lot of men are struggling right now with feeling useful because the landscape has shifted to where it's harder and harder to be useful as so many things are automated or refined. I think that one of the core problems with young men currently is that they're unable to find their place in society because of this crushing desire to be useful to someone or be useful to your group or your community. And I believe the solution for young men is to shift the definition from useful to things like fixing a car or helping opening a jar, the classic one, to contributing your idea, for example. And I don't mean just being a walking dictionary or encyclopedia. We already live in a landscape where information is just freely on hand. It's just one search away on your phone. I mean, provide something human, something that can truly resonate, and that's true to you. And that, no machine or system can replicate. Yet. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. You're probably familiar with the phrase, people only change when the cost of inaction outweighs the cost of change. Where change is only provoked after someone has hit a brick wall, reached rock bottom, and there's no other option than up. You might also already know that many people living today are living with just the right amount of comfort engineered into their lives, where there's no real desire or incentive to change. But at the same time, there's a constant deep inner struggle where they constantly ask themselves that, is this really it? If you're one of those people that's already chosen to begin the journey of change, and if you're tired of having all these old conversations that's been done to death over and over again, then this video is for you. I will share with you the 3 struggles that I have had personally experienced while being on this path, and the tips that I have for navigating each one to make this journey a bit smoother. The first of which is that when you're first starting out on an unconventional life path, whether it be your own business, doing your own creative project, etc., whatever it is, you gotta protect your mind frame, like your life depends on it. Because at the early stages, when your external scaffolding hasn't been created yet, When the results and visible proof haven't appeared yet, your mind frame is the only thing that's holding you up. Even taking a break and switching your brain off can feel like blowing out the only candle in the room, because there's no other source of light yet. Your business hasn't made money yet. No one's watching your creative project yet. You can't rely on any external source of energy yet. So it all has to come from you, which is why you need to protect your drive, protect your vision, and your mentality, because your whole inner structure and trajectory depends on it. Don't overshare your ideas with people who don't get it. Don't ask for feedback for people who are stuck themselves. And don't expect people to clap for you when there's nothing visible to clap for yet. Your job is to make sure you don't drop your self-belief halfway. The second thing that I learned is that just because you're not winning conventionally doesn't mean you can't thrive as an outlier. I fell into the trap of believing that I had to win conventionally before I could even think about thriving as an outlier. That I had to successfully thrive at a 9-to-5 job, successfully support a family, and successfully work my way up through promotions at some company, complete level 1, before I could make my way into level 2, which is to take an unconventional path. But here's the truth. The entire point of walking the unconventional path is that you don't have to compete and get trapped into a rigged conventional path anymore. If you waste your energy and time trying to do the conventional life path, then that defeats the whole purpose of going the unconventional route. If you don't necessarily need to be good at being a cog in the machine in order to be successful outside the machine. Just because you can't land a decent 9-to-5 office worker job doesn't mean your business ideas or your creative media ideas can't work. I never really succeeded in a conventional way. I didn't graduate into a high-paying job. I didn't have the typical social momentum that young people had in their early 20s. But not winning conventionally doesn't mean that you're not going to win. It just means that you have to play a different game, one with longer setup time and less upfront external validation. The biggest mistake people make is assuming that if you're not getting results through the standard system, like school, work, status, then that must mean that they're behind. Building something that's not recognized by the conventional system takes time, and it takes faith. It takes resisting the urge to jump back onto the conventional track, just because it has clearer metrics of success. Don't mistake the lack of traditional validation for a lack of potential. The third thing is thinking that your idea has to be revolutionary. That's the reason why most ideas never see the light of day. For some people, laziness or procrastination isn't what's holding them back. It's the idea that your idea isn't good enough for public consumption. But here's the thing, you only figure yourself out by releasing the early imperfect stuff. Most of the time your ideas aren't going to be revolutionary, and that's okay. You'll never start if you wait for it to be revolutionary. You're not going to be a perfect swimmer the second you jump into the pool, but do you let that stop you from jumping in at all? So let's circle back. Taking a leap of change isn't some magical moment where suddenly everything works and goes into place, and you get momentum and praise. It's a long, quiet stretch where you act like someone who's already succeeded, without any proof you've actually succeeded. If you're on this journey of change right now, you're not alone. And feel free to drop a comment down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. Let me be blunt. I used to think I had a productivity problem, that I was just lazy and that I like to naturally procrastinate a lot. But the real reason was that I was living out of sync. Back when I was just living on autopilot, trying to float into the environmental sustainability industry, that never truly resonated with me. Every single task just felt like pulling teeth. I was constantly distracted and putting things off until later. I told myself that that was just who I was. I was a procrastinator. But what was actually happening was that my subconscious alarm systems were going off and telling me that I wasn't meant to be on the path that I was currently on. I don't believe that most people are natural procrastinators. It's not something that people just naturally get into. It's something that people tell themselves that end up making them stay on autopilot and not actually dig deeper into why you're actually feeling that way. Once you shift into something that actually aligns with you and resonates with you and matches with how you think, then your entire relationship with work and how you enter into the flow state will change. Because the drive becomes internal. Flow state is just a side effect of alignment. If your internal values don't match your external actions, no amount of 5 a.m. alarms or ice baths will save you. Because they're just consumptive activities in disguise. I used to be stuck in this loop. Every free moment I had was spent playing mobile games while I was listening to podcasts. So how do you rewire your dopamine system from passive consumption to productivity? Here's the mistake that most people make. They attempt to transition directly from passive consumption to active creation. But here's where most people get stuck. Even after they find alignment, they stay trapped because their brain's wired for passive consumption. There's so many things we think that are productive that actually aren't. For example, posting food or travel pics on Instagram. That's still consumption. Watching productivity videos on YouTube, but not actually doing anything, that's also consumption, but with the illusion of being productive. We've been wired to do things that feel productive while nothing actually moves the needle. So if you still think that you need motivation to do the thing, maybe the problem isn't that you're lazy. Maybe it's something in your life that's being misaligned. Real momentum comes when your actions and inner values finally converge. That's when flow state becomes your baseline. It's when you stop burning out so quickly, and it's when you stop chasing motivation and finally begin building instead of consuming. However, that shift, in most cases, will be way too jarring and will eventually overwhelm you and swing the pendulum all the way back into consumption. The trick is to go from passive consumption to passive creation. Things that don't feel productive, but actually are. For example, brainstorming ideas, logging down your thoughts on the daily journal, even just chatting to AI, although that comes with its own sets of benefits and dangers that I won't get into this video. The point is, passive creation is when your downtime still produces long-term value. You don't have to be grinding 24/7, but your defaults are now aligned and it's aligned with building, not escaping. If you like what you heard, then please consider pressing the subscribe button down below for a lot more content coming your way. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. I'm 23 and I've never liked the idea of going to therapy. It has never appealed to me because young men are being told to open up more and more and to just be vulnerable. And when we do open up, oftentimes it falls on deaf ears or it's later used against us as a gotcha sort of weapon that someone pulls out and just makes it so that we just don't want to open up anymore. And we're also told that we just don't want to go to therapy because we like bottling up, right? And while that can be true to some extent, it's overlooking a larger systemic issue with the industry. Let's be real here. Modern therapy is broken, but it's broken by design. It overlooks the issue where instead of addressing why so many of us are disconnected and demoralized, it leans more into treating the symptoms. For example, handing us a label like, oh, you've got depression, or oh, you got ADHD or anxiety. And for some people, maybe they just have a chemical imbalance in the brain and it's just innate, right? But for most people, it doesn't just fall out of the sky on you. You get it because of an underlying root cause. There's some deep dissatisfaction in your life that you're not happy about. And most men today, young Gen Z men in society, are checking out of society because they don't feel valued or seen. or they don't feel like they're part of the community or tribe, so to speak. And for the young men that do end up walking into the therapy room, what often happens is you just do a bunch of breathing exercises and mindfulness exercises, right? And you just get told to step up, because the overall general cultural script is still that if you just follow the conventional route, if you just, be a good man, then you should not struggle in life at all. And so if you are struggling, then people tend to default and box you into the category of there must be something that you're doing wrong. There must be some character flaw. They make it into a moral thing. But in reality, I'm just going to tell you right now, it's a systemic issue. And I'm not just doing this to, avoid accountability or to put my problems onto the system, right? I'm not telling you to just sit at home and just to give up and be a basement dweller because the system's rigged against you. Even though the system can be rigged against you, I still think that that's not a viable excuse to just sit on your ass all day and do nothing. Because here's the thing, right? If you just give in to the rigged system, that's exactly where they want you to be. That's exactly where all these sedation tactics come in, right? You just become completely sedated by anything that your mind desires. You don't have to go outside or work for it. You can just pick up your phone and there'll immediately be a cheap substitution for what you actually want on your phone. And so you just scroll through, constantly addicted to it, and then that's it. You're exactly playing into where they want you to be. You're controlled, you're sedated, and you're invisible. That's why I say that it's not a really viable excuse at all to just give up, essentially. So what should you do then to counteract sedation culture? And I specifically bring that up because I feel like it doesn't have to be all this hustle culture stuff that people can easily get dragged into. Like, oh, I have to be like watching motivational, inspirational videos and things. That can be part of it. It can be like long form content as well, like what I said before with podcasts. But it can also just be, as I said, like SpongeBob lore videos to help you fall asleep. The thing I really like about those is that some of them can be just really chill, right? It's not that constant drilling in your head, constant desire to keep your attention, and you just, it frees up your mental headspace. Well, first of all, my suggestion is to curate your own consumption circle or ecosystem, especially online. Because here's the thing, you need to be consciously checking in with yourself what you're consuming and actively block out what doesn't enhance either your mood, your knowledge, or just overall make you into a better person. There's so many just brain rot stuff online these days. So it's not about endlessly scrolling through it and finding as much entertainment as you can. It's more about making sure to create and curate your own online ecosystem that reinforces the mind frame that you want. And here's the thing. For me, at the moment, I just listen to a bunch of podcasts and, like SpongeBob lore videos. So yeah, this is just what I recommend as a starter if you feel constantly trapped in this endless dopamine loop. Because the algorithm looks at what you respond to. So if you do have a personal story or something you'd like to share, feel free to share it in the comments down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye. So basically, right, most people live their entire lives in defensive mode. They wake up and they just react to whatever comes their way. They don't adapt, and their entire framework is built entirely on avoiding risk rather than creating or finding opportunities. But here's the truth. In today's day and age, avoiding risk may feel safe in the short term, but it's actually holding back your long-term growth. Playing it safe may seem like the smart choice because you can't lose anything if you don't risk anything, right? Well, the thing is, people hear the word risk and they immediately associate that with gambling or like buying the lottery. And they determine that stepping away from the conventional route is just too big of a gamble. But in reality, it's more like fishing, where if you go after your own business venture or creative media venture, for example, you can control where you go, where you place your rod, what time of day to go, and you can also study what types of bait to use to get the catch that you want. Sure, you aren't guaranteed anything, but at the same time, there will always be fish in the ocean. And not trying actually means that you're missing out on potential opportunities. So if you choose not to risk anything, then you are losing, but you're not losing what you already have, you're just losing out on missed potential. And inaction becomes your biggest bottleneck from success. If you always take the path that takes from success. If you always take the path that guarantees results, then you'll be effectively waiting forever because it'll be like navigating a maze, except every turn you make could be a dead end and you only want to go the right path. You don't want to go on any detours. So you just stay still. You actually never move anywhere your whole life. When you're just trying not to lose and make choices based on what reduces the most risk, you're actually not steering your own trajectory. You're letting your current life's maintenance dictate what decisions you end up making. Here's the paradox. People who play not to lose instead of playing to win actually end up almost guaranteeing long-term risk through stagnation and regret. So be on the offensive and live intentionally. Stack skills and have patience. It's not about being reckless, it's about being proactive. Audit your choices and ask yourself this: is my choice about avoiding failure or is it about expansion? Is it about chasing growth? You'll find yourself gradually making bold moves that compound. Detach from external validation, because defensive people only act if it's socially acceptable. Don't be afraid to act even if it looks weird, and don't fear being misread by people. I'll see you guys in the next video. Good luck. Take care. Bye-bye. I used to think that making the difficult choice was the hard part of change. Turns out I was dead wrong. It's actually just the beginning. So here's the thing, right? When you actually start telling yourself that you'll start putting in 100% effort and full focus on the task that you're currently doing, you trick yourself into thinking that that's all you need to tap into your entire potential at the moment. But that's not the case. If that sounds like you right now, let me explain to you why that's wrong. So your highest potential as you currently are is not necessarily your highest potential overall. It's just the point where you start encountering resistance. It's just your current ceiling. Which is why just merely making the decision to go all in on something is not enough and won't start producing the results that you want to see. Because when you start putting in your all, you hit that level where you encounter the friction, the resistance, and you believe that that's your entire potential, when that's not the case. So instead of beating yourself up over it again and again, just know that change is not instantaneous. I know that sounds obvious, but we tend to forget that a lot of the time. When we want to change, we want it to happen immediately. Because without external results, the only thing you have is just your own self-drive, your own self-belief, right? That's why we want change to happen quickly, because once we get those external results, that validates our vision. That tells us externally that there's something that we can visibly see that says we're on the right path. You can't just look at what's already emerged for people who are already successful. You got to look at the process and how they got there, and not replicate it exactly, but replicate it in terms of doing your own version of it. Make it your own. Walk your own journey. And it may seem very difficult at first because there is going to be a lot of resistance. And this is exactly why having the right vision is important. The right vision that's true to you. This is why falling in love with the process is important. Because you're going to reach a point where you don't feel like doing it anymore. You're going to reach a point where you burn out. You don't want to keep going. But at the end of the day, it's not your motivation that keeps you going. And don't worry about the people who are just sitting on the sidelines telling you, oh, I told you so, when you swing and miss. Because it's always easy to be right in hindsight, where your default is just not doing anything, not taking that chance, not taking that swing. So you never miss. And it's true, you do never miss. But what also doesn't happen is you don't grow. People just want the emotional relief of transformation without actually going through the process of transforming themselves. When you're transforming, it's actually barely noticeable at first. It's not going to be that perfect snapshot of before and after you wake up on day one. Because motivation is fleeting. And honestly, I wouldn't even say it's just strict, hard discipline either. Because most people, let's be real here, most people won't be able to stick with that for long, extended periods of time. I would say that what actually keeps you going is true alignment to your goal, to your vision, to what your inner true self is, what you want to express to the world, what you want to bring to the world in terms of value, what you want to contribute. And so once you have that, you just incrementally level up one at a time, one level, one step at a time. And eventually, all those will conglomerate together. Those will add up over your journey. And personally, I'm not very big on strict routines or schedules, which is why I rely more on rhythm instead. Those two sound pretty similar. I know, like rhythm, routine, two sides of the same coin, right? Everyone works differently, right? Some people, they thrive on repetitive daily routines. And if that's you, then that's great. But personally, I would say I work best when it comes to long, uninterrupted periods of workflow. And if that sounds like you, I'll give you a little tip on how to optimize that to have maximum productivity. Basically, when you first start out doing something new and that you actually like, whether it be just a side hobby or for work, it's easy to fall into the habit of making that your life instead of just your work. You gotta figure out where to separate that line of work mode and rest mode. Because we're so programmed to think of work equals not fun, right? When you're working a job that you don't like, your brain automatically separates that into work mode and not rest mode. There's a clear difference between the two. But when you're actually doing something for work that you do like, that doesn't automatically happen anymore. You gotta manually be conscious of it and then make that split yourself. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that that is just your life now. And that when you're resting or when you're working, the lines are blurred. And if you're not sure whether to drop something or continue with the current trajectory you're going, ask yourself this, do this thought experiment. I'll use myself as a personal example. My previous master's degree that I was doing in environmental science, every single time I finished a class, I did not feel better about it. I felt worse. And here's the thing, when it comes to laziness or misalignment, this is how you distinguish. With laziness, it only feels bad beforehand. And if you don't do it, you feel guilty for not doing it. But when you do it, for example, you don't want to go to the gym for a workout, you go work out anyway, you typically feel better about it afterwards because you did something you were supposed to do. You were committed to it. But with environmental science, every single time I finished a class or an assignment, I felt genuinely worse about myself afterwards. That's how I knew that it was time to pivot into something else. Start a new path. Start a new trajectory. So if it's genuinely leaving you drained afterwards instead of more content, then that might be a sign that it's time to pivot into something else. Protect your energy. Your energy is one of your most useful resources and most valuable resources, along with your time. I know a lot of people disregard energy, thinking that it's not important and that you just have an infinite well of energy whenever you get motivated. But energy is more limited than you might think. Protect it and curate an ecosystem, an online ecosystem, and in real life circle that fosters your energy instead of depleting it. That means cutting out all the fake people. That means cutting out everything that's not serving your trajectory at the moment. It doesn't mean be a jerk or an asshole. It just means that you're prioritizing yourself and your energy and your trajectory over bullcrap that other people might be serving up. If you liked what you heard, be sure to leave a comment below and consider subscribing for more content that will come in the future. I will see you guys in the next video. You take care. Bye for now. Let's be real here. We all know that the world has changed, especially since the last 5 years. If you're living in the West, then this is especially apparent. You can see it everywhere in society. People have gotten more closed off, more addicted to their phones, and just generally less social, more recluse, and the community spirit seems to have disappeared. If you're someone who's recently been noticing this or have been living through it yourself, let me explain to you why this is the case and what happened in these past 5 years, especially. So I've been living in Australia for almost 20 years now. I first came here in early 2006 with my parents, all the way from Kaifeng in China. It was quite a long journey, but by the time I got into Australia, in Adelaide, I felt immediately that there was a sense of shared community spirit there. That once you pass by someone on a morning jog, for example, you get the, oh, g'day mate, and you get the just community-filled spirit. I could definitely feel it when I first landed there in early 2006. And I remember first getting out of the airport, driving along the highway to the place that we were going to stay at. I remember smelling this distinct smell that ended up being from the beach. I had never been to the beach my entire life at that point. Although I wasn't alive for that long. I was only 4 at the time. But it was just stuck in my memory so much, because when I did eventually visit the beach, I just remember how great everyone was getting along there. The barbecues and sausage sizzles there, the Australia Day celebrations, the people trying to go crab fishing and garfish fishing as well along the jetty pier. And I remember this one guy who had his 2 dogs with him while he was fishing. And it was just such a joy to connect with these people. Connect with, at the time, new people in a community that I've never experienced before. However, all of that changed since 2015 and 2016, which was when the culture wars began. That also coincided with the rise with social media, like Instagram, and also just a general rise in toxicity among people as well. I was in middle school at the time when that happened. Even though I wasn't fully immersed into the broader societal system yet, I could feel it from inside the school system that I was in, inside my own little bubble, so to speak. People were getting more separated into distinct hierarchies, although I guess you could say that that's just a normal part of school development, childhood development. When you're in your primary school, no one's putting on a fake performative mask yet because the social hierarchies haven't been fully formed or established yet. And that's just a natural, regular part of childhood growth. That's just what happens when you get into adulthood, high school, when you get into the workforce as well. But what was different was that for the first time, social media was involved that amplified all of the toxicity. It amplified everything that could have been regulated beforehand with classroom regulations, with anti-cyberbullying regulations. But it had just gotten way out of hand at that point. And then all of a sudden, fun things that used to matter like making frog in a pond, playing heads down, thumbs up, softball, dodgeball, didn't seem to matter anymore. Because it wasn't about just having a good time, quality time with your friends, hanging out together. It was about performing. It was about gaining clout. It was about ranking high in the hierarchy that social media was amplifying. Gone were the days where you could go out digging for Christmas beetles and finger painting with friends. And the days of social hierarchy performing were here. Some of my most fondest memories have been in primary school growing up, where I was digging through all these Lego blocks, boxes of Lego, things like Lego Power Miners, Batman, and all these different subcategories of Lego minifigures that I was rummaging through. And it actually makes me quite sad that the newest generation that just started this year, Gen Beta, and also Gen Alpha to a large extent as well, growing up being iPad kids, will miss out on a lot of these core memories and these memories that are so valuable to growing up. And it's the core experience of growing up that they will never get to experience like we did. But I guess you could say that for every generation, they have their own set of experiences and fun times. But what are these new Gen Beta and Gen Alpha kids getting in replacement of what we got? Cocoa Melon? That hardly seems to be a good replacement, I'd say. It doesn't foster growth, it just hijacks your dopamine and like really screws up your attention span. And the thing is, this goes back into the larger conversation about the cultural shift, right? It didn't happen immediately overnight in 2016, 2017, etc. It slowly crept up until it really got extremely noticeable ever since around 2020-ish, after we all know what happened. And I think that was the breaking point for a lot of people who stopped performing and actually just sat down and looked around and just started questioning reality, questioning whether the reality they grew up with, the reality that they got taught that would work and that will give them a good life when they were growing up, after they've grown up, is actually truthful or not, and does it actually apply to our current society or not. And in a lot of these cases, you'll find that the answer is, unfortunately, no. And if you're genuinely feeling a longing for the past, it's not just you. And it's also not you just romanticizing the past or just being blinded by nostalgia, because there's actually measurable statistics like the cost of living crisis, the mass immigration protests going on right now in Australia as we speak. And I remember that when I first came here, let's be real here, people actually were allowed to celebrate their own country. People actually found pride in where they lived, the communities they lived, what people they interacted with. There was actually a shared sense of community. But recently, I think there's been a loss of social cohesion. There's been cultural fragmentation, not just in terms of immigration and whatnot, but more in terms of ideology, and also what I mentioned before about immigration, how there's so many different fractured social groups right now currently going on. It's just a big melting pot of so many different ideologies, ways of living, religion. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with diversity. And there's also absolutely nothing wrong with immigration. It can absolutely help a country thrive. But there comes a point where you must ask, are we actually better off not having an overarching social structure? Because in most cases, in most communities, without that, the community appears to fall apart. And it's been proven time and time again. And it seems to be happening for Australia. And the truth is, a lot of kids today are being brought up to be successful in a climate and landscape socially that no longer exists anymore. One of the examples is the classic moving out at 18 or 21. In today's day and age, having a bachelor's degree at university is what a high school certificate used to be
back in the 90s or the early 2000s. And now your personal portfolio acts as the new tertiary credential, right? It's the new university degree, your new master's degree, the new PhD. And personal portfolio means what skills you actually have, what workplace skills, what experience, or what practical skills you have. And the thing is, those things you can't really achieve a lot of when you're 18 or 21 because you're just starting out, right? You've barely just finished school or you barely just finished university and you're just stepping out into the world. You haven't gotten that much experience yet. You haven't had that much life experience either, or work experience. So the thing is, why move out then when you're not prepared? A lot of people at age 18 and 21, they force themselves to move out because it's an outdated social game, because it's just doing it for external validation. Validating to your peers or peer pressure about, oh, are you still living at home? Well, that's embarrassing, isn't it? But the thing is, it's getting increasingly more and more common, and it makes sense that people start moving a lot later, like a few years later than when they're 21 or when they're 18, because you need time and extra energy to gain all those experiences and all that career leverage that will actually enable you to survive better and thrive better after you move out. Because when you do it too early, what ends up happening is that all of those energy, time, and resources that could have been spent towards gaining more career leverage all goes towards maintaining a life you could have had if you just stayed at home. That's it from me for now. I'll see you guys in the next video. You take care. Bye-bye now.
Hi everyone. Hope you all had a great weekend. And today I just wanted to talk to you about my experience with faith and how a lot of the lessons that I've learned in these past few years can hopefully help you navigate your way through some of the potential difficulties that you're experiencing as well. So if you've been online at all and haven't been living under a rock for the past few days, you'll know that we're living in a very dark time in the culture wars right now, and just in general in history as well. And there's a lot of turmoil going on, a lot of division, a lot of hate as well that I see online. And I just wanted to share at this time how we could keep ourselves grounded, not get lost in everything that's going on at the moment, and just continue to stay hopeful for the future. And if you're also a fellow person of faith as well, then hopefully some of the things that I say could stick and help you navigate your way through your own difficulties that you may be experiencing. So I got sent to a Christian primary school and got introduced to the gospel and the scripture at a very young age. I went there in year 1 and we had the early morning worship songs and also devotions every single morning. But it wasn't until after I had exited that structure, that community, where my faith actually had started to grow and develop properly. Because beforehand, when I was in primary school there, I was just going through the motions. I had a very surface level view of Christianity through the lens of that particular school structure. And it was only once I got out of that where I went through a long period of just constant surface level faith by myself, because I wasn't getting any external output from anywhere else like I did before. It was like constant hand holding back in primary school for me. But in middle school, I didn't have any of that anymore. So that was why the whole faith thing for me just went on the back burner all throughout middle school, all throughout high school as well. And it was only when I finished high school, graduated, got into uni, and then around 2020, when all these lockdowns happened, where I really started to got forced to reflect on myself and where faith actually plays a part in my life. I was continuously asking myself and questioning whether it's just my own voice in my head or my own self doubt, or is it actually God talking to me? How do I distinguish that? How do you distinguish that? If it's actually just something that is through the divine that's speaking to you, or if it's just you. And I was just constantly thinking whether it's just some feeling you get that makes you feel better or feel good, at peace, even, that signifies that that's God talking, versus if that's you talking. But it took me a long time to realize that peace with God is not peace from God. And what that means is, I'll share with you a verse. So if we look at Job chapter 23, verse 8 to 9, but if I go to the east, he is not there. If I go to the west, I do not find him. When he is at work in the north, I do not see him. When he turns to the south, I catch no glimpse of him. What this means with that was that Job was not at peace. He was in the right standing with God, but that doesn't mean that his troubles have disappeared. In fact, God tested him by making his hardships a lot worse. He had all these things, he had all these material possessions and also relationships as well. All of that got taken away from him, but he still persevered. So, what happened was that God didn't reveal himself emotionally, but Job's obedience never actually broke. So if we look at another verse right here in Philippians chapter 4 verse 7, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. But notice how it says that peace of God is a gift, but it's not a guarantee. And it's not always granted instantly. So even when you're on the right path, sometimes God will withhold it. Not to punish you, but to train your spiritual muscles, your spiritual growth and development. So what this all comes down to is that trusting God is not about trusting Him because it makes you feel good, because you get emotional comfort from it. It means trusting Him because you trust that He is good, and that even when you're not having all these peaceful feelings at the moment, that you still have faith, and to not confuse His silence with His absence. Another trap that's somewhat easy to fall into, I'd say, is the clarity trap, where you just get addicted to being reassured every single time, and your obedience to God shouldn't be hinging on that at all. And here's another trap that people can easily fall into, which is that faith needs to be structured, otherwise it's easy to fall into sedation. You can't be relying on vibe-based faith at all. You gotta have your own structure about it, your own rhythm. You gotta put the reps in, spiritually, faith-wise as well. Just like you would at the gym. Faith is something that our culture have been slowly, gradually drifting away from over the course of these past few years, or even decade, I'd say so. And we've drifted away from things like faith, scripture, and gospel-based structures, more towards materialism, hedonism, and just self-indulgence, basically. And for a while, like I mentioned beforehand, when I was in high school, I had a period of materialism. I was more entranced in things like, like flashy possessions, flashy cars, flashy mansions. I wanted that above so many different things. And what actually opened my eyes and brought me out of that state was not actually sitting down and reading a Bible verse or even just going to church. What actually brought me out was realizing that those things can't get what I actually wanted. And at the time, what I actually wanted wasn't all these material things or objects that I could buy and own. What I actually wanted was to be not misread, to be seen without any negative stereotypes inflicted on me. And those things money can't buy. And eventually, it led me back to God.
One of the biggest traps that I see people falling into time and time again, and that you should definitely avoid, is letting your belief become your shackle. It's letting it become your cage instead of transforming you. Because once you're transformed, it won't feel like a shackle anymore. It won't feel like it's holding you back. It's not going to be your leash. And that will never be sustainable at all. You're eventually going to feel suffocated. It's about letting the process of your belief, of becoming a Christian, of your journey transform you over time. It's like shedding off your old skin like a crab, right? It's like molting. You keep growing, and becoming someone new instead of letting it cage you, letting it cage your innermost desires. Because at the end of the day, it's not anything that we do that saves us. So you should let go of this belief, if that's you, where if you just do all the right things, do all the things that you're supposed to do, that you think you're supposed to do, that will be what saves you in the end. But it won't. And I'm not saying to not contain yourself or be reckless about it. I'm just saying that it's not healthy for it to come from a place of fear, instead of recognizing that we are saved by God's grace and that it's a gift and that we don't deserve it. But He is willing to give it to us. I want to end this video on a positive note though, and have you going away just realizing or remembering that it's not what you do that saves you at the end of the day. It's God's grace that saves you. And it's Jesus and it's God who actually delivers us from evil. So we must not fall into despair. We can't. And I want this to be a message of hope. If any of this resonated with you, feel free to share your experience down below. I'd be very interested to see your stories and what you share about your own experiences with your faith and connection to God. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. If we take a look back into history, all the people that we celebrate today who lived long ago in the past seem to be those who contributed massively to human progress, whether it be science or philosophy, and just general advancements in technology, human morality, and also just have completed great significant achievements within their lifetime. People like Einstein, people like Nikola Tesla, Galileo, Shakespeare. But here's the thing, many of these great notable people from the past that we still remember to this day weren't actually liked during their time when they were alive. Many of them were actually hated, overlooked, and a lot of them only actually got notoriety because they got documented by other people or because of what they left behind. But the question now is, where or who are the modern day equivalents of these people? In 2025, especially for young people, who are they looking up to? Surely not TikTokers with those broccoli cuts, right? You could argue that it could be figures like Jordan Peterson, for example. But I think the deeper question lies in what type of people are being pushed as the new idols in today's society. I would say it's entertainers and not thinkers. But the thing is, were thinkers ever actually pushed by the mainstream? Because if we look at history, it's really easy to come to the conclusion that it's only recently that the mainstream has been pushing entertainers to the forefront of our idol culture. But the thing is, it's always been that way. It just looks like it hasn't because we don't really remember the entertainers of the past. We don't remember the specific names of gladiators who fought in Roman Colosseums. We don't remember the specific names of the chariot racing champions of back in the Roman times. But we do remember people like Marcus Aurelius, Aristotle, Plato. But the thing is, I think we've come to a unique point in history where, for the first time, entertainers have gotten to a point where it's oversaturated due to social media. People have gotten tired of the fakeness, the inauthenticness of some of the entertainers and some of the influencers online. So it's gotten to a point where the people back in the past, like Aristotle, only can rely on written texts and also public speaking to gather people around, to really open people's eyes on the truth of our culture. And especially with the introduction and rise of AI entertainment as well, I think that that has contributed especially to entertainment being cheapened. It's easier to make, it's also easier to mass produce, and I think overall people have just gotten way too desensitized to certain things and also overstimulated. And I think we're moving away from a culture and an era where people just seek complete entertainment, complete immersion into a fantasy world. And I think people are starting to seek authenticity, truth, and wisdom again. And honestly, I do think this is where people can step in to fill in this gap of being the new age thinkers. Because we live in a society right now where a lot of the wisdom of the past have been forgotten. They only exist in textbooks and haven't been translated to be digestible for the new age and new generation of people to discover. And as a member of Gen Z myself, who was born in the early 2000s, I can definitely say that in this landscape, I feel that my generation do need figures that share wisdom of the past so that we can rediscover it. And the reason why entertainers have always been pushed as the idols of a culture, or not just the idols, just the people who gain the most attention in culture, I think is because it's a widespread and discreet way of gradually pumping in certain types of ideologies into mainstream, into the people's heads. And I do think that that's something that we can see happening in real time right now with our pop culture. Just look at Hollywood, for example. If this video resonated with you, be sure to leave a like down below, and also feel free to drop a comment sharing your thoughts on this as well. I would love to see it. That's it from me for now. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. True freedom does not actually come from wanting more or having more. It comes from needing less. If you're one of these people that are bogged down in constantly chasing after the next thing to buy, chasing after the next thing to consume, embroiled in the materialism and consumer culture, let me explain to you what that quote actually means to its core and why it might be time for you to sit back down and have a recalibration of where you're going in life, what your trajectory is. So my dream car was the white Lamborghini Huracan. And a few years back, I started my own car accessory business in hopes of just making as much money as I could. But what I quickly found out was that I was way out of my depth. I was selling things like seat covers that's imported from overseas, and also just general car accessories that a lot of other local, more established brands in the community have already mastered. And even Temu beat me price-wise so much. This is what happens when you begin something that you truly do not have any alignment or passion for. You just end up copying what other people have done and mastered already. Social media has basically convinced all of us that power comes from aesthetics, social standing, and also social signaling. It comes from what you have. The value is externalized from you and into what you own, what you can tangibly hold or see. But the thing is, right, but if we really take a step back and really look at it, right, analyze it properly, other than function, what things in our daily lives that we buy and own just to impress people actually helps us, actually amplifies who we already are, and helps us serve our trajectory? How many things do we own are actually based on what we get in order to fit into a certain archetype or aesthetic? You'll be surprised that it's probably a lot more than you think. And here's the thing, right? This is the trap that it's so easy to fall into this trap. Basically what happens is you spend all this time and energy pouring your hard-earned money into chasing things that end up not mattering in the future, or just end up disappearing after the next aesthetic wave rolls around. And what ends up happening is all that energy and time becomes wasted because you're stuck in maintenance mode. You're maintaining a life that you never chose, but that you think you want, because other people have it and these seem to be living a good life. But the thing is, most of it's actually just fake. The vast majority of it is not real. It's just curated so that you feel like you're missing out by looking at what other people are doing online. And let me tell you something. I'm someone who's never been a big nightlife or clubbing or just general party guy, right? I like my evenings just chilling at home, maybe playing a few games or watching a few shows here and there. And I don't think I missed out on anything, to be honest with you. I don't feel like I've missed out on what people call the party years of your 20s, because those don't really bring me contentment at all. I have gone a few times, and it feels like I have outgrown a phase that I never really fully participated in. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because some experiences you can only learn from actually experiencing it yourself. So I don't know if I'm just speaking out of something that is specific to me and may not relate to everybody, but I just generally do think that Gen Z in general is moving more towards the path of finding self-contentment over just performative social signaling culture. And I really think that it's like one of those things where it's like that one experiment that I heard, forgot the name, but you'll know when you hear it. It's like everyone's in a car, nobody actually wants to go on the road trip, but since everyone thinks that everyone else wants to go on the trip, they keep silent and never speak up. When in fact, if one person actually just spoke up, then no one would have to go on the trip. We don't realize just how much time and effort we put into maintaining all these things. We don't realize that our lives outside of work is essentially another full-time job that's dedicated to maintaining the image of a lifestyle that we never consciously chose in the first place. We've got to be really, really careful with how we choose to live, how we design our own life, because if you choose the wrong one, what's going to end up happening is that, yeah, maybe you get the aesthetic power that comes with that lifestyle, but what also happens is that the responsibility that comes from that lifestyle as well, the extra baggage you carry on just to maintain it, becomes an anchor and hinders your ability to pivot into something else when you eventually do find out that that lifestyle didn't suit you in the first place. When you're chasing the image of a lifestyle, every new thing you own becomes another obligation. And you're cluttered not because you're disorganized, but because you're living on autopilot. You're essentially unconscious. You're flying blind. You're essentially flying on what blueprints have been externally injected into you through mainstream messaging, through media, through social outlets. And here's the thing, a lot of people easily fall into the trap of thinking that I'll just go along with this lifestyle that I didn't choose at first, just to provide for the lifestyle that I do want. But what ends up happening is that you get anchored deep down into your current lifestyle because all these new responsibilities and obligations keep piling on, and it becomes a thing that's so difficult to pivot from, right? It's so difficult to pivot from because there's nothing much you can do, because you don't have the time and energy left at the end of the day that's spent maintaining and performing to withhold your current life from falling apart. That there's no extra energy you have left or time to spend towards creating the actual life that you want, the dream life you want. And it's a trap, because even if you succeed in this, even if you reach a point where you don't have to maintain your current lifestyle anymore, and you're free, financially free, and also time-wise, to just go live the life that you want. But here's the reason why you're still not actually free. Because you're shifting from maintenance mode to reactive mode, where what influences your next lifestyle, the one that you think you actually want, it's going to be greatly influenced by things that you missed out on previously. And it's probably going to be leisure activities, comfort-based activities. And those things don't actually accurately reflect your dream life. I'm telling you right now, because comfort doesn't equal vision. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that what gives me entertainment, what gives me comfort, what gives me a bit of fun in this precise moment is my passion. But the thing is, passion is what you're willing to suffer for. You spent most of your life maintaining a lifestyle, grinding, working really hard to reach a point where you can finally afford to just sit back and do some things that you actually want now. You're going to be inclined to do the things that give you comfort, not to suffer even more, because you've already suffered enough. And so what basically ends up happening is that you spend decades of your life grinding towards just being able to sit down, go out golfing, just being able to do some leisure activities without feeling guilty. That's all you get. That's your reward at the end of decades of hard work. If you're someone that doesn't want to end up being on this path, end up being the person that doesn't get anything, doesn't get rewarded for their effort at the end of their life, and you want to break free from this, you can start now. I wouldn't say it's ever too late for someone to begin pivoting away, but it can get harder and harder the more you go down a certain path. And remember this is the really important part. Whatever you choose, whatever dream you want to go for, it's not about being comfortable. Choose things based on what feels the most authentic to you. What purpose that you want to actually strive toward. What you feel inspired by. What you really want to contribute to the world. What legacy you want to leave behind. Instead of choosing what feels easy. Instead of taking the easy way out. And by doing that, by following that simple rule, you'll slowly drift away from lifestyles that you never chose. Declutter yourself, both physically and mentally. Walk away from social ecosystems that are draining you or are holding you back, and curate your own. It may be lonely and isolating at first, but it's worth it in the long run. I can promise you that. And it's really, really important to remember to stop comparing yourself to other people's lifestyles. The only person you should be comparing yourself to is the past version of you. That's what you should be measuring against. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to share your experience down below and give this video a like. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. The clock strikes midnight. You see everyone else cheer in the room. Everyone all saying cheers, Happy New Year's, right? And clinking their glasses together of champagne. And you tell yourself that this is going to be the year that you will set all the goals that you wanted to accomplish last year, and that you'll stick to them, you'll keep going until you reach full momentum, and that you'll hold it out until the end. But what happens is, you set the goal, a month rolls by, January, and then by the end of January, you're no longer doing it anymore. You forgot what your goal even was at the beginning of the year. Most people don't know how to set real goals that they can actually stick to. If this sounds like you, let me explain to you why the goals that you've been setting have not been aligned to what you actually need, and how to make sure you actually stick to them right until the very end. So the first mistake that I see so many people make is that they set goals that are way too broad. Your goals can't just be something vague like, I want to be more social next year, or I want to make more money, because these are things that confuses your brain. Your brain doesn't know what to aim at. It's like telling an archer to go just shoot at the field somewhere, right? There's no specific target. You gotta have a target. Because when you have that, you can actually measure what you're progressing on. It doesn't have to be hyper specific, like I want to eat 20 Big Macs while showering, but it does have to be specific enough to where it's personal to you, to where it's something that you can relate to without comparing it to someone else. So for example, I want to get buff at the gym. That's a really common goal, right? But it's way too generic. It's way too common to the point where you're going to end up comparing it to other people, because so many other people have that goal, have the exact same goal as you. But if you have it specific enough to where it's specific to you, that drives down the comparison. Let's say your goal is to spend 3 months reaching 85 kilograms on the bench press. That's a specific enough goal, right? To the point where you won't be encountering much people, if at all, that has that same goal as you. So then what ends up happening is that the only person you have to compare yourself against is you, is past versions of you, is your old records. The second biggest mistake that I see people make is that they pick their goals not based on true alignment. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're someone who your whole life trajectory is to get to medical school, and that's been your path ever since you were in high school, and you've been grinding towards that. And then on New Year's Eve, you suddenly spout a new goal that's like, I want to make $1 million by the end of next year. It's completely not based on your current trajectory. And what's going to end up happening is that new goal is going to end up sucking away all the energy that you could have spent on your original goal, your true life trajectory. And because it's sucking away all that energy, it's leaving you drained, and what's going to end up happening is that you're going to have to rely on pure motivation just to keep going with that goal, that new one that you just piled on, that you set at the beginning of the year. And at the beginning of the year, your motivation might be pretty good, but as it rolls on, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to lack the discipline that it takes to actually achieve your new goal, because it never actually aligned with your full trajectory to begin with. The best goals are identity-based. It's about, I want to become a writer. It's not about, I want to write a book, for example. And the reason why this is so strong and powerful is because it's about your own personal transformation. It's about your own self-growth and journey. It's not about what metric you want to hit. Although what metric you want to hit specifically is pretty important also, because it's a good way of being able to measure how far you've progressed. But when it comes to finding alignment-based goal setting, you gotta find one that actually signals your own growth. Don't chase what others glorify if it doesn't align with you. You gotta be able to ask yourself this question and answer it. Why does this matter to me? Because if you can't answer it, then your motivation is just gonna collapse under pressure. The third big mistake that people make when it comes to goal setting is that they bite off more than they can chew. And I think that the quote, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in 5 or even 10, perfectly sums this up. You can't sprint a marathon. You can't force or induce personal transformation. You gotta let it happen naturally as you go along. Just like how I'm not forcing this video to go on any longer than it should be, because then I'd just be rambling nonsense. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And make sure to share your experiences down below. I'd love to read it and hear it. That's it from me for now. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. Here's the thing, right? Quite a lot of young guys, people same age as me, in their early to mid-20s, that I see, they tend to really want to avoid looking like a beginner. So they tend to just not try or feel really easily bored by everything, right? They just don't try. And then what ends up happening is, when you're young, you can look like a beginner because everyone knows you don't have that much experience, right? And it's fine. But the older you get, the longer you delay not putting much effort into anything, you're actually going backwards. You think you're staying neutral because invisibility, right? No one's seeing you. You can't embarrass yourself if no one's seeing you. But if you just stay as you are, what's gonna end up happening is that you're gonna get power crept as other people level up in their lives. You're not going to use that early invisibility as an opportunity to learn, grow, build new stuff, experience, and figure out what you actually want to contribute. And if you're in your early 20s, what are you so afraid of? You have nothing to lose. Chances are, you've graduated from university, perhaps, you can't lose your degree unless the uni just somehow revokes it, which so rarely happens, you don't even have to think about it. So what do you have to lose? You don't have anything to lose. So why don't you just go take that opportunity while you can? While you don't have all these external responsibilities, anything anchoring you down in the future. You can do it right now. So why don't you go do it? And getting bored easily isn't an excuse. It's not a personality trait. Being bored easily is a feature that your body has that tells you you need to go do something. It's not a signal to tell you to go into more sedation. Being bored is not a personality trait, and it never has, and it never will be. If you're easily bored, take that as a signal to go do something.
actually figure out what you want to do, right? And here's the thing, when you're running on alignment, when you're running on your passion, you don't have to rely on motivation. You don't have to rely on, oh, I'm so bored now, I don't want to continue doing this. Even when you're bored, when you're running on passion, it's not even a thing you have to think about. Because it doesn't matter if you're bored. It doesn't matter if you're tired. What matters is, when you finish doing that thing, does it make you feel content or not with your life? Does it make you able to rest peacefully? That's what actually matters. It doesn't matter how entertained you are, right? Those are just fleeting. And when you're doing something out of alignment, it's not about the money either. Personally, for me, doing YouTube isn't about the money. And I'll tell you why it's not about the money for me. So growing up, I'm a Chinese Australian guy, Gen Z, who grew up in Australia. I never felt like there was an archetype here that truly represented me, that truly made me feel comfortable, at ease, and not misread socially. It was either the Chinese international student archetype or the nerdy League of Legends guy who played all these World of Warcraft games all the time and just did STEM degrees all day, every day. But that wasn't me. Those all weren't me. Even the most recent one, the K-pop archetype, that's just aesthetics, cheap aesthetics people ride on. They ride on that archetype wave. They borrow the social capital that comes from it. And then what ends up happening is that all disappears. The wave ends in the end. And what are you left with? What are you truly left with? Nothing in the end. You're just going on borrowed time, right? Which is why I want to create something actually meaningful, actually lasting, that doesn't rely on societal trends or all these flashy archetypes that run on aesthetics. I don't care, all right? And this is why it's so important to stop stacking external leverage. Because so many guys, right? I have a friend who really gets into real estate. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, right? You've got to diversify when the time comes. But what are you diversifying into? He's diversifying into like 10 property real estate portfolios. Do you want to end up being the guy who's valued because you own 10 houses? Or do you want to be the guy who's valued because of what you represent? What values you have? What you're able to bring, thought-wise, to the whole broader conversation. So stacking external value, at least for me, that does not help, because at the end of the day, if you're rich, right? If I'm rich, I'm just going to be seen as the rich international student to someone who's never seen me before, who doesn't know who I am and just takes a look at me. So that's not the real bottleneck for Asian, Australian, Asian American, Asian English guys, right? In the West in general. That's not the bottleneck. The real bottleneck, right? The place that immigrant parents don't seem to realize is that it's not about your institutional power. It's not about what degree you get. It's not about whether you become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, right? It's really about how well you address the personal narrative. It's about how well you shape how others perceive you. It's personal narrative. It's not about how much institutional degree, how much money you can buy, right? How much stuff you can get. It's not about all that materialism. It's about how you choose to live. It's about how you sit down, think about what you're actually pursuing. And if you're afraid of being isolated, having no one understand you or get you, first of all, I get you, right? I get you. And if you like this content, be sure to leave a like down below, and there'll be a lot more of this content, and also video essays in the future coming really soon, right? But what I'm saying is, the loneliness you experience when you're actually pursuing something, when you're going off script, that's not the mainstream, when you're actually going off path, of the conventional path, and doing something unconventional, that loneliness you experience, that's normal, right? The isolation, that's just the rite of passage. It's not anything you have to really be worried about, because everyone who goes off path experiences that pushback. But what happens is that it's hard at first, but then the more you snowball, the more momentum you gain. It's like the domino effect, right? It's hard to tip the first domino, but once you do, it snowballs. and your results just start coming in because you've gained that momentum, right? It means that you've really broken out of orbit once you've gained that momentum. And trust me, I'm on this path. I'm walking it with you. If you're someone who's walking this path, I'll be here every step of the way and giving you advice and anything that I've learned along the way and sharing it with you guys. That'll be it from me for now. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. When you're in pain, what's the first thing that you do? What's your fight or flight response? Do you withdraw? Do you stop talking to everybody around you? Even when they're asking you constantly, what's the matter? Do you panic sleep like I do? Just knock myself out so that I don't have to deal with the consequences anymore or with the pain? But I think the real reason is, how do you interpret your pain? How do you process it? Because some people interpret it as a signal to withdraw, a signal to not evolve, and to just stay in their comfort zone, sedating themselves. The truth is, the way you interpret pain actually matters greatly to whether you stay as you are or whether you transform and move forward in your trajectory. A lot of what we think are just our natural personalities, our natural characteristics, are actually just coping mechanisms to avoid pain, to avoid the difficult conversations that we have with ourselves. And just to be clear here, I'm not talking about physical pain, I'm talking about mental strain, right? Where you just feel like you can't keep pushing anymore, whether it be your current path or something that you're trying to pivot away from. And the thing is, I personally believe that when you're having a lot of mental strain, it doesn't just come out of thin air. Obviously, it comes from your issues. It's a signal telling you that your current version of yourself is unfit to thrive in what comes next. So ignoring it and escaping into sedation, things like video games, addiction and all that, it's kind of like taking out the batteries of a fire alarm, right? And basically just throwing that whole thing away. You've taken care of the noise, but the fire's still burning down around you. Most people cling way too hard to their old identities, and they end up staying in environments that are toxic or don't serve them well anymore, and they stay there way longer than they should have. And honestly, your peace of mind shouldn't come from outcomes at all. You should detach it from outcomes. And I don't mean detach in a way where our detachment culture these days tries to get you to just numb yourself out. I mean detach yourself from allowing yourself to feel a certain way after you've achieved a certain outcome. And instead, make your journey itself be the thing that gives you the peace of mind when you sleep at night. Fall in love with the process. You know, when you first decide to change, the decision to change feels like it's the end of the line, right? But it's actually just the beginning. Because what happens is that your surroundings, all the people, your social environment, your structure, your daily routine and structure, those tend to fight to keep the old version of you. There's a lot of resistance, but that's not necessarily the fault of your environment, because that's always what they've known to orbit around, because you were the old version of yourself. But now suddenly that you've changed, it takes a while. Your external environment does not immediately change to reflect your inner transformation. It takes a while. That's a whole journey in of itself, right? So you gotta be patient about that. You just gotta keep pushing through, past all the noise. And when you encounter resistance, here's how to figure out whether it's just needless pain or if it's necessary pain, right? It's unnecessary pain when that pain does not force you to grow in any way, shape or form, right? That's when it gets to a point where you can make the decision to cut that bit off, because it's not helping at all. It's not teaching you anything, right? And here's the thing, numbness does not give you peace of mind. It makes things worse. There's this thing where a lot of people think if they're just detached, right? That'll just make everything easier, make everything you can just cruise through life. But when you're detached, you're just falling back into sedating yourself. That's what it comes down to. That's what you fall back into, where you enter that whole detachment mode. And you ignore that numbness that's telling you to go change something about your life, right? Because that's just your natural biological alarm. It's your alarm bells ringing. And here's the thing, when you're first starting out especially, right? When you're first starting to change, starting to go through all these transformations, my advice genuinely to you would just be to not get too attached to the version of yourself that you think you should be able to turn into, or your ideal version of yourself, because a lot of the times that evolves over time, right? The person that you think you wanted to turn into at the start of your journey may be just completely different from the person you actually turned into at the end, or even in the middle, or the person you wanted to be while you were 3/4 of your way through your journey, right? So just don't get that attached to a certain ideal of yourself you have in your head, and to just be more open-minded. Like, you're going to keep pivoting, you're going to keep evolving over time, right? Just know when to pivot, and then when you pivot into something right, you'll know, because there's much less friction when you're into something that truly aligns with you. All right, guys, this is going to be my last talking head video for the time being. I am definitely coming up with something really exciting. It's going to be a video essay, and it's dropping before Halloween. I have a whole stack of them lined up and ready to go. I can't wait to show them to you guys. It's going to be really, really exciting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, be sure to leave a like down below, and also be sure to leave a comment to share your experiences of personal transformation and growth. I would love to read some of your guys' experiences. That'll be it from me for now. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.